On today's episode of The Hero's Blueprint, we've got a master storyteller, brand strategist, and entrepreneur who's worked with some of the biggest names in the game. Think Mel Robbins, Jay Shetty, and Gabby Bernstein. He's the founder of Night Owls, an award-winning digital agency, and the creator of Night Owl Nation, a global community helping creators and entrepreneurs master the art of storytelling. He's taught over 30,000 students, hosts the Authentic as Fuck podcast, and lives at the intersection of purpose, branding, and real human connection. But what really stands out to me is his ability to make storytelling accessible. He breaks it down so that no matter where you're at, starting from scratch, pivoting, or leveling up, you'll walk away with a blueprint you can apply right now. Please welcome the handsome man himself, Sun Yi. How you doing, Sun?
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. I'm very excited to have you on the show. You know, we've been connected for a very long time, and I've been studying your work and everything you do for such a long time, and tried modeling and not copying, because that's something we're going to talk about on the show too, but, you know, pulling some stuff that you do that really works. And I think that you're such an expert at what you do, and you've helped so many people. So first of all, I just wanted to acknowledge you for that and just say thank you. And also thank you for coming on the show.
For sure. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So let's just dive right in, man. I'm curious. Let's go back before Night Owls and the big names. Like, what did life look like for you before you found your lane? And how did you start figuring out what you were actually good at?
Um, so I'm actually like a pretty late bloomer. So I see like all the, 25-year-olds out there killing it now. And I was nothing like that in my 20s. I think I wasted my 20s away smoking weed, playing video games. Um, and like I was in like a really cushy 9 to 5 job. And, you know, and I think I'm naturally very lazy. Like people find it surprising. Um, so I don't really have a lot of discipline, like naturally. So I kind of wasted my 20s away. I There was like one of my coworker who wanted to make a film, and then I kind of went to his film set and I fell in love with filmmaking. So I wanted to be a filmmaker. So I went to New York Film Academy for film school. But to pay for this camera that I wanted, which was like a 10 grand at the time, I started freelancing, making like my day job was making websites. I was a web designer. So I started freelancing, making websites to pay for that camera. And that freelancing in a couple of years turned into my agency. And then years into it, we started actually doing videos. And this is a funny story. Like one day we were in like our equipment closet and we have like all these cameras. And one of the camera happened to be the exact camera that I wanted to buy. But by then, like it's funny how like dreams work, right? Like you think you have this big dream, like your goal, and you're like, oh, one day, I'll buy this camera. One day I'll make $1 million. One day, I'll have, 10,000 followers or whatever. But once you actually get there, like you see that coming so far away that it doesn't even feel like it was a dream. Like it's. So that's kind of what I realized like at that moment. And then yeah, like in that agency, I built that agency from ground up. We started doing good work, so we started getting some big clients, Fortune 500 clients. We work with like Spotify, American Red Cross, clients like that. And then one day, Gabby Bernstein found us, just through Google search. And then I loved working with her. At that time, actually, right before Gabby came, I was starting to get bored of my agency. I was like dreading kind of going to work in my own agency. But then I just love working with Gabby. And I think the main reason was because with Gabby, I was working with her. This is before she had like a team. I was working directly with her rather than like, if I'm working with American Red Cross, I'm working with the, 26-year-old marketing manager there who it's just a 9 to 5 job for them, right? So they don't really care. So it's like, they like a lot of these big clients, they don't want to take risks. So they don't, they just want us to do something boring. They don't want any like innovation or anything like that. They just want to do something boring, get it on time, meet the deadlines, and that's it, right? So I think that's kind of the part that I was getting bored with. That's something that nobody told me, that once we start working with big clients, that it's going to be like that. So I actually love working with Gabby, and then her website just became really popular in the personal branding space. Like everybody was like saying, "Oh, who did Gabby's website?" All of that, and that kind of got the name, got our name out there in that world, in the personal brand world. And then all these personal brands started coming to us, like Mel Robbins. Gabby actually introduced us to Jay Shetty. Jay Shetty introduced us to Mark Randolph, who's the co-founder of Netflix. So that's kind of how it like, it really is like a, service business really is like a word of mouth business. So, and the rest is history.
Yeah. That's amazing right there. And I want to go back to something you said early in the beginning about the filmmaking, because you're such an expert at storytelling. When did you kind of start to feel like you started to notice storytelling? Was it when you were building websites, kind of integrating that in the websites you were building, or was it when you started working with like Gabby and the marketing agency? When did you kind of realize that was
Yeah.
kind of like a superpower of yours?
So I actually, even at that time, I didn't realize it. I didn't realize it until I started putting out content. So what happened was, yeah, let me go back a little bit. So I took the filmmaking class. I went to film school. I learned how to, I think one of the best things I learned in that school is screenwriting. So like like telling stories without dialogues. Because like when you're in film school and you write screenplays, you're not allowed to use dialogues.
Hmm.
You have to show everything. Like you can't say I was sad. You have to say I put my head down, and like you have to actually act out the sadness. Um, and obviously there's like the whole setup, conflict, and resolution. What makes a story, all of that. But I don't really use that. But um, and when we were making websites, like one of the pages that we really focused on. This was before even Gabby. I always have like a page on the website that tells some sort of a visual story of why you need this product. Because most people don't even know why they need a product. So I have to like very simply tell them. So I was really good at doing that, right? And then some clients would be like, "Oh, son, like I love the storytelling in your website." I was like, "Okay, whatever," because like I feel like the word storytelling has been so bastardized. Like it's like people don't even know what that really means. Like they're just like they see a good content, they're like, "Oh, like he's such a good storyteller" or something like that, right? Even though there was no story, like these websites we were building, there was no story there. It wasn't really story per se. It was just like almost like a sales page, or it was like a how-to page or something like that. And when I started putting out content, I I kept getting DMs and comments, people saying like, "Oh, can you teach me storytelling?" And even and at that time, I was kind of like, "What? Like what? Like why are you asking me?" Right? Like it's. But then after a while, it kept happening, and there's a company called Domestika, which is kind of like it's an online learning platform. It's pretty huge in Europe, and they reached out and they asked me to create a storytelling course for them, which I was like, okay, like I don't know if I'm the right person, but okay, and I made it for them, and that ended up getting like 30,000 students, and kind of like I was like, okay, I guess I'm a storyteller now. So I think that it's not something. So I didn't even recognize what I do was storytelling until the audience asked me for it, and then I turned that into and the storytelling somehow has kind of become my whole brand.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I want to follow up on that because there's a lot of people like you didn't even realize that storytelling kind of like was a superpower until you already pretty much head first into it. There's a lot of people out there who are creating content or trying to do their own thing online as well, and they feel like they don't have a story or they feel like they're not interesting enough. What would you tell somebody who feels like that they don't know where to start? Like, where is a spot they can start to kind of sell their story?
Hmm. I would say it's two different things. First, I would say you have to put out content without knowing what your story is or what your niche is, what your superpower is. Because I feel like superpower isn't something like because I see too many people do this, right? Like whenever I talk to like a coaching client or even my agency clients, they have a clear superpower and everyone around them sees it except themselves. And it's not that they don't see it, they see it too. But to us, our superpower feels boring.
Hmm.
It's like, anybody can do that. Right? It's like, that's so easy for me, right? Well, that's why it's your superpower. Do you know what I mean? So what they do is they chase some shiny object that they're not good in. Oh no, no, I'm not good in web design. Web design is so boring. I want to be like Gary V, right? Or I want to be like Tony Robbins, or I want to be like, name whatever you want to name. So I see this happening all the time where they have a superpower but they ignore it, and they chase something they're not good in. That's not their superpower because that's what they want their superpower to be, which is fine. Chase it. But until then, this is your superpower. And there might come one day when this becomes your superpower. But I guarantee you, when that day comes, you're going to get bored of that. Do you understand what I mean? And then you're going to want some new shiny object that's your superpower. And then you're going to get bored of that. And that's going to continue to happen. So I think the best thing to do is just own it and just put out content about anything that you know, anything that you're good at, anything that you resonate with. And really the audience will tell you what they want from you. And the way they tell you is every time I talk about storytelling, it gets the most views, right? Every
Yeah.
time I talk about this topic, it gets a lot of views, and people resonate with it, and they'll be like, "Oh, I love this," whatever it is. And usually that's going to be kind of the boring stuff to you.
Yeah. No, that's so true, and it's so funny because it's like you said, the stuff that's easiest for us is the stuff that's probably the most boring, but that's most likely our superpower. And a lot of people, they do chase that shiny object syndrome, and I've been guilty of it myself many times. I mean, like I don't necessarily love. There's aspects of digital marketing that I don't love, but I recognize that a lot of people come to me for certain aspects of it, and I'm like, why are they coming to me for this? Like, why do people need help with doing this or doing that? And it's really
What
funny
part
because
of it?
yeah, I'm a part of it, and that's something that I
No, no.
think a
What
lot.
what part of marketing do people come to you for?
Oh, the digital marketing aspect of it. I mean, just a lot of the times people will come to me for getting their actual like brand DNA completely kind of down, so that way they know exactly what they're putting on like a website or putting their brand online. And developing a personal brand is the number one thing that people come to me for is how can I actually portray myself authentically to other people so people know who I am, what I do, and why I do what I do. And that's really easy for me when because all it takes for me to do is just have a conversation with somebody. And I'm like, okay, you like to do this, you do this, here's your story, here's what makes you different than everyone else. And other people don't see it, but it's like, that's just a superpower that I have. But I also think it's really important for people to kind of take a second to pause and ask yourself, for the listeners right now, like, are you doing what Sun just said and chasing that shiny object? Like, are you trying to be everything except for yourself? Because if you're constantly posting stuff that is completely inauthentic to who you are, you're going to get burnt out. And even if the stuff that's normal for you, that's easy for you, is boring, it's better to put that stuff online because there is somebody out there that most likely needs what you're putting online. And if that's your superpower, put it online because you're going to help someone at the end of the day. And try and really focus on that as your mission as you're continuing to develop and grow and figure out what you're actually good at. But I just encourage everyone to kind of pause for a second, just really reflect on that. But Son, I wanted to ask you because I've seen you post before that massive failures make great comeback stories. What's one failure you used to hide or avoid, but now see as a gift?
Okay, before I go into that, I just want to kind of add on top of what you just said, which is um the thing that's boring to you actually is not boring at all. It's only boring to you because you think, because like most people, what they do is they start, and everything is exciting in the beginning. In the beginning, when you're learning something, you're getting better at something. It's like, when you go to the gym, like it's called newbie gains, right? Like,
Mhm.
like, and then after a while, it's just it becomes like, it's like, so you make drastic the learning curve is like, it's drastic in the beginning, and it starts to slow down, and then that's when you start to feel boring. It's like, oh, I'm not making as much progress or whatever it is, right? But the thing is, there's levels to this shit. Like, once I got bored at web design, I started to see the next level of web design, like the things that 90% of people are not doing in web design, right? And once you get to the area, it gets challenging, it gets fun again. And once you get bored of that, there's the next level again, the top 1%. And then there's always the next level. So if you feel like you're getting bored of something, like, oh, I already know this inside out, trust me, there's there's levels in that game that you haven't reached yet, and like make that the challenge rather than looking for something new, because what's most likely going to happen is when you keep chasing that new niche, you're going to get bored of that at some point. And I think this is why people keep changing niche, like they go from one niche to the next niche. And what you're doing is, you're not, when you do that, you're not building momentum. Actually, something has to get boring in order for you to be successful in it. That's what I always tell people, right? Like it's um, the for me, like our agency actually started growing when I got bored of it. Because like in the beginning, I kept changing niche. I'm like, okay, we're gonna go after startups, and then after like 6 months, we're like, nah, that's not working. I'm gonna go for healthcare, Medicare, med companies. Oh, that's not working. We're gonna build, apps, and that's not like. And every time we change, like we were just like, when we're starting to build something, but then once I got bored and I just kept showing off for my clients, it started taking off. So don't get so attached to the excitement of achieving this level, but just the passion has to not come from getting to that level or something like that. The passion really has to come from the day-to-day task in front of you. Like if you love making websites, like you really have to take that craft and take it to the next level. Like if you love storytelling, you have to take that craft and take it to the next level in everyday tasks that you do.
Yeah, I just want to say real quick, that is so, I absolutely love what you just said, because there's a lot of people that are probably at that situation right now to where what they're doing is at that point to where it's boring, and they're thinking about switching. They're switching that niche, or they're seeing a lot of people having success in something online and they're about to switch that. But you just gave them an alternative on what can they do to take it to the next level. And a lot of people probably have, I know for me that that's not the first thing that comes to my head when I'm like plateaued. It's not like, okay, what can I do to go to the next level? But that's such an important thing right there, because it's like that option is there. And although it's not always the first thing that comes to people's heads, like what is one way that you can get better and make it fun again for yourself? So I wanted to touch on that again and have people kind of take a sec to think about that, because that's such a, you just opened up another lane for people that probably it wasn't even in their head.
Yeah. And that's how you get to mastery too. Like that's how you become literally the best at what you do,
Yeah. I never thought of it that way, son. For anyone listening right now who doesn't know, that's one of my favorite things about Son, is he really gets people to say, I haven't thought of it that way.
Yeah, I love here. That's like my goal in life, to hear that as much as possible.
Yeah. So about the failure though, and what was one failure you used to hide or avoid but now see as a gift for yourself?
Yeah, so one of the things that I realize is, like here's a recent one, right? I mean, oh my gosh, the number of failures that I have, like, I can't even count, because like I have so many failures, and I'm like, even now as I'm building Night Owl Nation, there's a lot of failures. You know what I mean? That gives you shame and things like that. But I would say one of the biggest ones is few times. Like, first of all, I failed trying to build a business 6 times before my agency actually became something. And the key, and the biggest difference is Night Owl. My agency's name's Night Owl. It was the first business where I actually kept going until I got bored of it, and that's when like the success came. But I failed at 6 different businesses. Like every time I try to get something up, it's like you run out of money and, well, go back to 9 to 5 or whatever it is, right? But in Night Owl, there was a time, one big failure was about 3 years into it. I had these 3 kind of key employees. They came to us. They came like, it was okay. I remember it like it was yesterday. Like one of them was going on a vacation, and I can kind of sense like something is up. So I texted him, and it's like, hey, he actually texted me and he says, hey, I think we should talk when I get back from my vacation, right? And I was like, oh, I'm going to be thinking about this for the next 2 weeks. Let's just talk today. And this was already at the end of the day, like after he went home. So I kind of called in a meeting. It's like, let's meet in the office. And we all got to the office. And he told me that he's leaving the company, right? And not only was he leaving, like two other people were leaving with him, like three of our kind of core members, right? And I got very defensive. Like, I was why, blah, blah, blah. Like, I just kept, for 30 minutes, we kept going. He was trying to like justify, and I was trying to justify like that, give excuses. But finally, he said this. He said, I realized that you're never going to let me make decisions. And that at the time, as soon as he said that, like, I started tearing up. Like, I couldn't stop crying. Like, but I didn't really know it then. I didn't realize like until a couple years later is what happened was in my previous job before that company, my boss was like he was like a tyrant. He was the type of person like, do it my way or the highway, right? Like it's actually, it was like the worst boss, right? It was such a toxic environment that I said, when I start my company, I'm never gonna be like him, right? And I kind of like, that was like the identity I created for myself. Like, I'm like, oh, I want to be the cool boss. I want to be the understanding. And what he said completely obliterated that, right? He's like, he said, you're never gonna let me make decisions. So like at that moment I realized like, and the reason why I started crying, I think, is because I realized there's truth to what he's saying. Like, I was a micromanager. I was very controlling. I was like, everything had to be, I was a perfectionist. I couldn't let go of control. Like, I was so bad at delegating, right? And trusting people to run stuff. So that was one of the biggest lessons that I learned in business, is like letting go and learning to trust like, rather than kind of babysitting every step of the way, which is what I was doing, letting them do it the wrong way, and even sometimes letting them fail, and letting them coming to ask you for help instead of you like kind of like shadowing over and just micromanaging and things like that. So that moment was a huge, like, we basically, that kind of really hurt our company. I had to kind of build it from scratch, but it was like a really big moment. After COVID, so another big one was after COVID started, I like, we had a really fancy, nice office in Soho. Like, it was like a Soho loft. And it, like, I love when people, like, we have clients come over, they're like, oh, wow, like the cool office and all of that, right? And I think I tied my identity to that office too much. And I was like, even after COVID, we were all working from home. A few months have passed by, and we're just like paying $20,000 a month every month for rent. And I never thought to even like close down, right? Obviously, it took a lot longer for people to go back to work. So, but eventually, I made the decision to shut down the office. We went from, like, our revenue has dropped like significantly at that time. So we went from having like 12 employees to putting everybody on contract, and like we started kind of downsizing a little. And at that moment, um, I thought everybody was gonna, like, it was more of my ego than anything else. I thought everyone's gonna be like, I knew it. Everyone's gonna be like, I knew someone wasn't cut out to be an entrepreneur. I knew he was gonna fail, right? But actually, nobody did, and it was like another learning moment where a lot of times we do, like, at least for me, I do a lot of things in business out of ego, right? Like a fancy office, or like making it seem like we're so successful and things like that. But I've really learned to just let go of that, and like, I don't care what people think of me or what people think of us, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But those are two big ones. Like, I fail all the time, and I'm not a now I'm kind of like not afraid to admit it. Like, even in my community, like, I fuck up all the time, and I tell my community members, it's like, oh, sorry, sorry guys, I know I promised this, but like, and it's like, yeah, it doesn't hurt as much as it used to.
Yeah. I think that's so important that you said those two stories right there, because, you know, I think that number one, I I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but I actually love failing. Not only because for the lesson that I learned from it, but also because it really gets to show me who is really interested in the stuff that I'm doing. Like when you're failing in front of your community, when you're messing up, you're actually inviting them to come even closer with you because it's like, okay, yeah,
Mm.
like they want to be here. It's not that they think that you're this perfect person or something like that. They see you as a person. And I think that like one thing that you said in that second story too about perception with like your office, a lot of people focus so much on their perception and they want to be a certain way and appear a certain way online that whenever they do inevitably start to work with whether it be like starting a community and have to get in front of people, it's like now they have this act they have to put on and they have to have this mask on 24/7. And then the second they fail right there, like their own ego can destroy everything. And that's actually what I want to ask you about next because a lot of people aren't aware of their ego and a lot of people are driven by ego still. And I think that I still am, and I have to check myself all the time. And it's one of the hardest things in the world to do because it's like I think that I know everything. I think that whatever, like that's how ego is. Curious for you, how do you check your own ego and be aware of it and still be confident enough to lead, build, and show up online?
Like I have the biggest ego, and I'm not ashamed to admit that, right? Like I think my business early in my business, I struggle so much because of that, right? Like I would fire clients. Like when you're in a service business, at the end of the day, you're in a business to serve, right? So I see this with a lot of creative entrepreneurs now that like I made that same mistake, but I at a much more uh extreme level. Like I would fire clients. I'm like, oh, you don't want this design? Well, I don't want you as a client, right? But I also see a lot of creatives making that same mistake, and it's it really hurts the business. So I think for me, and here's another thing. It took me 10 years of like struggling to get to the realization that like my ego was the problem, first of all. Right? It's kind of hard to most people would have probably figured it out in like a year or two. Like it took me a really long time to see like I'm the problem, right? And then once even I realized that, ego still plays, ego still creeps up, like you know. And then even though I'm perfectly aware that like my ego is hurting me, but it still creeps up, and there's like still sometimes like I'm trying to prove myself, or whatever it is, right? Like here and there. But I don't know if like I'm really good at checking my ego. I'm aware of it. So maybe that's a huge part. Like I think the awareness that it's um the awareness that my ego is the issue here, and not somebody else, not blaming it on somebody else. First of all, I think it's because that's step one. Once you can do that, I think that's like for me it's half the battle, right? And then after that, like okay, even though you know it, you still have to like overcome it and kind of still be humble and things like that. But for me, like what actually it does for me is running a business will humble you. Like you want to drop your ego, run a business because the market will crush your ego. Like the algorithm will crush your like because I see people do this all the time, like where they're like, oh man, the algorithm hates me. Like they're not showing. Well, no, it's not that the algorithm hates you. Your content sucks. That's why you're that's why the algorithm is not pushing. Nobody's watching your content, right? So you have to have you have to drop your ego to even see that, right? Be like, okay, it's not that people are stupid. That's not why they're not watching my content. It's just I'm not doing something in my content that people want to see. You know what I mean? So it doesn't matter like how much ego you have, the market will stomp you. The market will humble you, and it will make sure that your ego is gone. So I think that's for me that happens all the time, and I just think that that's kind of how life lessons are, right? Like with my ego, even though I've learned this lesson more than 10 years ago, it keeps coming back in different ways. Like even like on a daily basis, like I would jump on a conference call, with our leadership team, and I'll say something that's like from my ego, and then afterwards I'm like, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that. So it like if you it's kind of like like people who go to like 12-step meetings, AA meetings or something like that, like it's like alcoholics. Like they can't even have they have to live one day at a time. They have to live as if like one drink is gonna completely like, relapse, right? Like you almost have to realize that and say, once you've learned a life lesson, that's not the end. You're going to have to relearn this lesson over and over and over again for the rest of your life. And ego is one of those things, I think, you
Yeah.
can never let go.
No, I would agree with that. That I think that ego is one of those things that you can't say that you've mastered it ever, because the second that you've mastered it is the second that it's got complete control again. And I want to share one piece of advice I think to add on what you were saying too, because the awareness part I think is so crucial. It's step one, but it's also understanding too is that if you're noticing, like someone was saying, you're finding yourself blaming a lot of things like the algorithm, or you're finding yourself blaming the market, whatever the heck it is. There's a real high chance that your ego's in play, because your ego wants you to think that everything else is the problem and not you, and it's going to attach responsibility and blame to everything except for you. But when even in situations that like you're like, oh my gosh, this is not my fault at all. If you just say this is my fault, that there's some sort of responsibility I have for it, then you have power to take a step and actually take action on that. And I think that a lot of people don't like to get to that step. That's also like that step two. You have the awareness, but now like, what do I do now that I'm aware of my ego? Once you kind of can do that, I think that you can really kind of tame it. Because again, I
Yeah.
don't think you could ever master your ego, but I think that there's a lot of ways. Like for me, I feel like I can tame my ego a lot, and it's always whenever I can say I'm the problem, and not the market, or not the algorithm. But yeah, I just wanted to add that on.
Sometimes it creeps some. I actually want to give a good example. It creeps up on you in the way that you would have never expected. For example, 4 years ago, I posted this, or 3 years ago, I posted this video about my community, Night Owl Nation, and why we charge so low. And I built this, and that video like went really well. And people always tell me like, "Oh, I love what you're doing. Like you want to help people, and you're not doing high ticket and blah 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 blah." Right? So my ego, because like for me, ego is very closely tied to identity. Like
Mm,
I built this identity around, okay, I'm the person that um is anti high ticket, and I want to help people, and that's why we want to charge low. And like I built this whole ego around it. And 3 years later, what I'm starting to realize is that I actually do need to do a high ticket. Right. And I used to always say like, oh, people say you don't pay attention. I'm like, that's bullshit, you know. But it actually like it turns out that is true. Like it takes me a while to learn lessons, but it's true in a sense that the reason why they pay attention is not because they pay a lot. Actually, what it does is it filters the actual go-getters. Like for example, our clients, we charge shitload, and our clients are happy to pay that because they're the type of they're the go-getters. They're the ones that built the business, and they have a high revenue, so that whatever we do, if they are going to execute on it, number one, and when they execute, it's going to give them a return. But then there are the other 90% of the people who who will take a course and do nothing with it. Well, they'll just like they won't put in the work. They won't, even if I tell them to put out content, they're not going to do it. And so for those people, yeah, it is a total waste of money if you pay that much, right? So what I realize is that it's actually a filter. Like the price point is actually a filter, but because of my ego, because I've been built this entire identity of anti high ticket, like it's hard for me to come out and say, "Oh, I was wrong," and high. It's like actually we should. So sometimes our ego, it's not just like in a bad way. Sometimes our ego put us in this place where we want to be the savior, or we're the good guy, right? And we're anti that. When in reality, that might just be your ego talking, right?
yeah. You also said something in the beginning of the show about that you're naturally a lazy person too, and that takes a lot to say that out loud. But I think that I'm really happy you said that at the beginning, because there's a lot of people who wake up in the morning, they're just naturally they don't have a fire or like a drive that just gets them out of bed. And a lot of people, I talk to a lot of people and they feel bad about that because the glorification online is like you always have to 24/7 be doing something crazy. Like your life has to be on 100 miles per hour. I'm curious from someone who considers themselves naturally lazy, how do you develop discipline? Like, what would you recommend to someone who's in that situation that or feels similar, can relate to what you were saying, that wants to develop discipline, but they just don't know exactly how to start? What's your system for that?
Uh, okay. A lot of these things, ego, discipline, all of these things that you're talking about, like, because trust me, in my life, I've gone down the wrong path so many times where I turn around. And you know how, like, in storytelling, people always talk about the rock bottom moment? Like, if you're alcoholic, there's a rock bottom moment where you turn around. And like, until you hit that rock bottom moment, people don't seek help, right? And it's the same thing. Like, with the ego, it's the same thing. Like, when, like, I don't know if you heard this quote, like, you can't wake somebody who's pretending to be asleep. So, like, you have to hit that rock bottom moment where you say, okay, I need some help, right? And for me, discipline was one of those things. My ego was one of those things. Like, I just think that you have to fail so many times in life, and you have to get stomped on so many times in life by the market, by your audience, whatever it is, by life, right? To a point where you're like, okay, I give up. I'm at the rock bottom moment. I need to turn this ship around, right? And and so that's kind of what happened for me, right? Like I said, like, with ego, but also discipline. Like, I've tried, like, people like, weed is so addicting. Like, I was at a point where I used to smoke weed every day, like, from morning to night, like, and I just couldn't get off. Like, if I go on vacation and I can't bring weed, like, for the first 3 days, I can't even sleep, right? And then, like, I'll come back and I'm like, okay, like, now I'm good. I'm not gonna smoke. But then I'll come back and I'll start, like, the first thing that comes to my mind is like, like, okay, where's my bong or whatever it is, right? So that's one of those things. Like, I've tried to quit so many times, over and over and over, I really had to hit rock bottom, because what I saw, and it's the same thing with, like, eating healthy, or going to the gym or something like that. At some point, you start to see how badly it's affecting your life, and I think you kind of have to do it repeatedly. Like, you have to do it, and then you have to be like, okay, I'm good now, and then you fall right back into it. Okay, I'm good now. You have to have that dip a few times to see the pattern, to be like, oh shit, this is really fucking on my life. Like, I it's really holding me back. And for some people, all it takes is one time. Some other people, it takes 10 times of repeating mistake. Like, and it's you see a lot of, like, girls say this, right? Like, oh, I keep going after this toxic relationship, toxic men. Like, well, you're the one who's doing it, right? So they have to learn. Like, at some point, and they keep doing it. They keep this, like, repeated pattern. But for me, at least, I know people talk about therapy and, like, the healing and all of that. Like, I'm sure that helps too. But for me, I think, because even for you to get that help, even for you to go to admit that it's my fault and I need help from this. And I see people do this also. They go to therapy or they go to a coach, and they don't listen to the coach. Do you know what I mean? That means they were never ready to begin with. So I think it first you have to get to that place where, okay, I've hit my rock bottom. I need help. I need to change this. And for me, like, the discipline all came from there. Like, I I saw how much better my life was when I have routines. I saw how much better I was when I quit smoking weed. I saw how much better my life was when, you know, when I go to the gym, or when I run in the morning, or, like, all of those things. So it was, for me, it was that I just had to hit a rock bottom moment where I said to myself, okay, I need help.
Yeah. No, I love that you said that because there's a lot of people who are in a situation probably where they might be at that rock bottom spot. And they don't they might be looking at it from a place of, okay, I'm at this rock bottom and I can't get back up from it now. And I think it's good that you said that because for a lot of people, knowing that there's a way that it can go in a good direction or you can use, This rock bottom moment, I think, is really important for people to hear. And I also think it's important for people to hear. One thing I got from what you said is essentially you gather enough evidence over time. So once you can kind of start seeing if it's your fifth, 10th time doing something, then you have evidence that it's hurting you. And I think it's really important to take a second to kind of think about, like, not only just think about it, but feel it. Because like for me, like if I think about something and I get all logical with something, there's a strong chance that it's not going to actually, like tomorrow I'm not going to think about it. But if I actually sit with something and say and check my ego, because my ego is going to tell me no, like this isn't your fault. This is everyone else's fault. If I sit there and I say no, like let me feel what's actually happening and the consequences of this, that feeling right there is something that helps me to make change, because then I can remember that feeling. I can remember like, oh my God, I felt so depressed that day because I did this. I don't want to feel like that again, so I'm not going to do this.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
I think that's very important for people to kind of think about.
Yeah, yeah. I actually do have that feeling, and that's actually what's doing it. Because some people think they're at rock bottom, but they're not. Because I see some people who's like, I really want to change my life, or I really want to, build my business or something like that, and I tell them to like post content or something like that, and we'll look at their schedule and they're like, oh yeah, like, but here this is like time I have to wind down, I have to watch TV, blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, why don't you cut that out and spend that time to make content? I'm like, well, but I need this time, like I need this. I'm like, okay, so maybe you haven't hit rock bottom yet, right? Maybe you don't really want to change your life, right? Because hitting rock bottom means that it means because it's going to be hard. That change is going to be hard. That discipline is going to be hard to not turn on your TV, to wake up early, to go for a run, to make that content. It's going to be super way harder than you can ever imagine. But the only thing that can fight that is that feeling of like, oh shit, I don't want to go back to that dark place again. And only if you really truly hit rock bottom, that fear becomes greater than the thing that you don't want to do.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's gold. That's straight up gold right there, because that's something that people. There's a lot of people listening right now that can relate to that. They're like, wait, actually, they're remembering. Like, I know that feeling. I don't want to feel that feeling, and we're telling you right here because we both experienced it and probably experience it on a daily basis. It's like when you remember that feeling, that's this. A lot of times that's strong enough to counter whatever the heck it is that you're about to do, that bad thing. And although it
But you
sucks,
also know, like, once you've been doing it for like few months, it gets easier. Like once you're in that routine, once you're in that discipline mode, it gets easier. So it's like, but that first few months, whew,
yeah,
it's gonna be tough. You just gotta keep that feeling that you're talking about. Like, oh, I don't want to go there. I don't want, because it really is like a, it's a spiraling down moment. Because like once you get down there, it feels like impossible to get out of it, and it's like, yeah, I know that feeling too well.
yeah. Yeah. No, we definitely try doing everything we can to prevent ourselves from getting back to that point. But again, like you were saying with ego, it starts with that awareness. It's even just giving yourself that awareness and being aware of it is step number one. But son, I want to ask you and shift real quick to branding, because a lot of people now, especially that I talk to, whether it be coaches, consultants, even people who have general business, small business owners, they hear the word branding and they're starting to become more aware of it and kind of that, hey, maybe they should put more attention to it, but it's very overwhelming. So I'm curious, what's the first move someone should take to begin building a brand that's authentic
Mhm.
and clear?
I really like what you said before about like you'll talk to somebody and then you kind of it's like once you talk to somebody you can kind of figure it out easily. Um, and the reason why is because I don't think that. So I'll talk about it from the personal brand's perspective, but this also applies in corporate brand. Like if you're a corporate brand, whoever's at the top, their personal brand is the corporate brand, right? Like it's kind of like I don't know about the story of Uber, but when Travis they replaced Travis, the whole company turned around, right? And it's because like whatever is at the top, it comes down down the chain. So I do this with CEOs as well as personal brands, which is the first thing we do is we do a 3 hour um, kickoff meeting where I'm basically the therapist. And I literally tell them to tell me their entire life story from beginning and like their childhood, everything, right? Because once I start asking those questions, like, oh, why did you feel that way? Oh, why did you do that? Like, what are some of the key memories in your life? Like, when you have these memories in your life that are very vivid, because we don't remember every second of our life, but there are certain moments in our life that we remember. It's because it means that it's unresolved. Let's say that, and usually, most of them, actually, always, it's kind of it's a bad negative memory. It's never a positive memory. So all of those things are still haunting us. So one of the first thing I have to do is like ask them all those questions, what their weakness and strength, and really dig deep, because most people don't even know who they really are. And you have to know that in order to, because that's your brand. So first we have to figure out, okay, what, I think here's a good example, right? One of the ways of we do brand story is, there's only two ways a brand story can go. Either it's your hero's journey, which is, I struggle with this, and then I overcame it, and the story of how you overcame it, right? Like what happened, what's the thing that made you realize it, and how you overcame it. So like for Mel Robbins, that's like the 5-second moment, right? Like she was stuck in a rush, she was waking up late every day, she was like drinking too much, and then one day she saw on TV like NASA doing a rocket launch, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and she just like, it's like, let me try that tomorrow morning. Like, let me launch myself. And then that kind of, and then she started to be like, oh, that's weird. Like, why did that work? Why, and she kept digging into that. And that became kind of, this is where I used to be. And here's how I fixed it, right? And I can help you overcome that same challenge. That's kind of one brand story. But another one, which I think works better, is what I call weakness to strength story. Your weakness, like for example, my mom used to always tell me how naive I am. Like, son, you're so naive. Like, you just trust people too easily. Like, you'll never be. She used to say that you shouldn't start a business because you'll never be you'll never be a savvy entrepreneur because you're too naive, right? People will take advantage of you. And I'm like, what? Like, no, I'm not. And I'll get all defensive and things like that. Because, when you go to a job interview and people ask you, what's your weakness? People make up, like, people have the same answer. Oh, my weakness, I'm a perfectionist, or I'm a workaholic, or like, they, they give you the safe weaknesses. But like, just think about, like, go back to your childhood. Because your personality is your personality, and there's a weakness there somewhere, and that was my weakness, right? I am too trusting. I I I do let people take advantage of me, and then I let them do it again, right? And then so people around me are telling me that all the time, like all my friends, everybody that I know. So everybody has that thing that they're not so proud of. They're actually a little bit ashamed of, but everybody around is telling them that, and they actually get defensive about it. I'm like, no, I'm not naive. No, I'm smart. Like, but the thing is, here's a story. Like, when I was young, my dad paid me and my sister $10 to wash the car. I spent 2 hours washing every detail, like waxing it and all of that. And I used the $10 to go get wax and air freshener for the car. So I like basically washed the car for free. and like, that's kind of how, like, those are the things that made my mom say, you're never going to be a good businessman, right? It's like, so don't even try. And the same thing happened when I started freelancing. I quit $100,000 a year job to work for 9 months for a client that paid me $1,700. So this client paid me $1,700, and I spent the next 9 months trying to make the best website in the world for her, right? So, I mean, like, my mom was right? But that website, somebody saw that, and they loved it so much. The next website, they pay me $3,000, and that one only took me 3 months, which is still not that great, right? But then right after that, I got a client who loved those two websites and paid me $10,000 for 1 month of work, and on and on and on, right? So and it was the same thing. Like when we first started working with Jay Shetty, they couldn't pay us our rate, but I did it anyway because I love Jay Shetty, and like, so, and we went over and beyond, right? Same thing with Gabby. Like we actually lost money on Gabby's project because I went over and beyond on that project. But that's why that website got featured on all those blogs of like top personal branding website, which ended up getting us Mel Robbins and all these other clients, right? So I can argue that my biggest weakness, me being naive, actually turned out to be my biggest strength. Does that make sense? So that's
Yeah.
like what I call a weakness to strength story. So yeah, I mean, I think that you really have to dig deep into your soul and figure out who you really are, like shamelessly. What are your real weaknesses? Like what are your real strengths? And how is that your strength? Like in our community, one of the things that we do is like, if you're naive, you put that into a thesaurus, naive. And then what other words does it give you? And it's like, is there any positive traits there? Because every weakness and strength is two sides of the same coin. So yeah, I mean, that's like one of the things that I try to do with our clients. Like we try to really get into the DNA, because what's going to happen is if you don't do that, what happens is a lot of agencies do this. Oh, they use these words and colors and things like that, and they're like, oh, transparency, innovative, like, and this is our brand, and people come up with those bullshit words. But then, like, if you say you're all about transparency, but well, the culture doesn't show that. Let's say you're not a very you hide information and you're not, then it's actually it's gonna backfire on you, right? Or you know, like if you say, oh, we're all about the customers, right? But then in their company, like instead of hiring like 4 customer service people, which is what it's required to really properly do customer service, but you want to save money, so you only hire 2. Well, then you're misaligned. So if what you're saying in your brand is different than the real you, then at some point that's going to clash, and all people are going to do is call you a hypocrite, right? So you really have to know what your weakness and strength are, and you have to lead with that. And that, I always say this, like, your brand is basically your reputation. If you keep saying, oh, I respect people's time, but you keep showing up late to every party, you keep showing up late to work, keep showing up late to every meeting, well, nobody's going to actually, believe that, right? So your brand is not built with words, but with your actions. The words just come later. Like, I actually tell all of our clients, like on day one, that if you need somebody to meet deadlines and be on time with the launch date perfectly, don't hire us, because we always miss deadlines. And then I go into the reason why, and I say the reason why is because we'll plan the website, blah blah blah, but we always realize towards the end that, oh, we bump into a problem. We say, oh, we did it wrong, so we have to go back and fix it, and we have to do it the right way. And most companies will just be like, it's okay, let's just launch it like this to meet the deadline. We actually don't. We'll stop the project, we'll go back and we'll redo it. So therefore, we're not gonna. If you want to meet deadlines, we're not the right people for that. But if you want the best website, that's what you're gonna get here, right? So I'm just very upfront with our clients. They want I tell them all of my weaknesses up front.
Yeah. That concept is so powerful, because what that also does is when you're able to list off all your weaknesses, and like you said, there for every weakness there's something that's attached to it that's a strength as well, is you're making yourself more relatable to people. So from a leadership perspective, especially if you're an owner of a company or even if you're a small business or something like that, when you are listing your weaknesses and finding a way to pull a strength from that, and you're being authentic and vulnerable to whether it be your employees or the public, you're inviting them into to come closer to you and speak to them, because there's a lot of people who are naive, there's a lot of people who are lazy, there's a lot of people who are all these things. And if your company or you are not speaking about these things because you think that, hey, you need to be perfect, you're literally pushing away the people that you could probably be helping best. Because if you're naive, if you're lazy, you can help those people that are lazy and naive. But how are they supposed to know that you're the right fit for them if you don't even speak about those things? If you can find a strength for your weakness, you can help other people find a strength for your weakness. And I think that that's so important for people, because when a lot of people are looking to build a brand and stuff, like you were saying, they're looking at colors, they're looking at big words, innovative, but they're not speaking about that. It's like, why are you innovative? Oh, well, I failed 100 times and didn't help a single person. So now I really want to make sure what I'm putting out there is actually going to help people. So that's what I mean by innovative. But if you don't even tell the story behind the stuff, then you're leaving people out from joining your story and getting involved and caring and having more than just like what if you're an employee, do you care about the company you're working for? And ask yourself, why not? What above are they doing that's not there, that's making you not care? And I always like to look at things from an educational perspective, no matter what I'm doing. Is like I'm always very, very observant in that way. So whenever I worked like any jobs, 9 to 5, stuff like that, I would always ask myself, what are they missing here that would make me feel better? Because I want to make sure that I'm noticing that, so that I can implement that and stuff like that. And it always came down to the fact that there was a barrier. There's a barrier between who I am, like reality. Like there was a barrier between reality because they wanted to be portrayed some way, and here's like how things really are, and they put a wall up between that, and that disconnect right there can destroy things. So I just wanted to add that onto that too, because too many people build a barrier in their brand.
So you're like it seems like you're very analytical. So it's that is how that becomes a weakness, because like most people don't realize like what their weaknesses are. What happens is, like, there are people in my company too that are like devil's advocate. Like they can see a problem no matter where we go. They see a problem, and usually like the society hates that. So you're such a Debbie Downer. Like you just see, you know what I mean? Like, so we try to hide it. We try to hide that side of us. It's like, okay, even though I see a problem right there, I'm not gonna say anything, right? Because then they're gonna, I don't want to be a party pooper or whatever, right? So they don't say it, and then so what you're doing now, because that's actually your greatest strength. The fact that you can see the holes is your biggest strength. But by keeping your mouth shut, because I don't want to offend anyone, be like, I don't want to tell this business owner where your business is failing or whatever it is, right? Then what you're doing is you're actually hiding your biggest strength too, and that is actually your brand. So and I see this all the freaking time. Almost every entrepreneur, every brand I see do that. They censor themselves because they think it's a weakness when it's actually their biggest strength.
Yeah. Wow, that's gold right there. People should go back a minute and re-listen to what you just said right there, because I think that is so important and people need to hear that. I can't even express to you how important that is, that, don't censor yourself. And people do that all the time. I do that sometimes. Yeah, again, that comes into ego, and I try to be aware of this stuff. But that's the fun thing about being an entrepreneur, is that there's never a moment where you're like, I have everything figured out. And I think that I love talking to people like you about that, because it's like that's being so authentic, because people want to get to a point when they're like, I have everything figured out and made. I am perfect. I am an entrepreneur. My life is amazing. I genuinely don't think I'm ever going to come to a point to when I feel like that. I know for a while when I was younger, I wanted to get to that point, but now I realize if I ever get to that point, that means I'm not serving people anymore. That means that I've just completed my mission for myself, but that means that I'm no longer helping other people, which means I'm failing in my ultimate mission. So it's like that little balance right there.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to tie that in with, I want to be respectful of your time, but I want to ask you one more question is, what does success mean to you now? And how has that changed from when you first started?
Maybe I can talk about kind of like my purpose or something like that, because like, I don't know if I see it I don't know if I see it in terms of like success or failure or something like that, because like that's such a specific term. Like obviously if I'm trying to grow Instagram, success is more followers. If I'm trying to like make a bigger profit, the success would be making making more money or whatever it is. But like in life, like I don't believe in like purpose in terms of my purpose is to, you know, like teach storytelling to the world. Like that's not my purpose. And like that's what people think my purpose is, right? But the thing is, like what I've learned, and this took me a really long time to learn because I actually try to look for that purpose. I'm like, okay, what's my purpose? Oh, my purpose is to make people feel this way. My purpose is to, teach people, make people learn how to say, I never thought of it that way, or whatever it is, right? But when you tie your purpose like that, you're gonna realize very quickly, it's like, oh, wait a minute, no, that's not my real purpose. Actually, my real purpose is that, and you're gonna keep going back and forth. And I wasted 10 years of my life trying to obsess about what's my purpose because I couldn't find that one thing, right? That that like Simon Sinek says, right? Your why, right? I couldn't find that one why. So, but then what I actually realized is my purpose. What I realized is like whenever I'll use this word, whenever I'm being useful as a human being on this earth. So it can be like this podcast conversation, right? Like I want to be as useful as possible to your audience, you, whatever it is. And I can see that and I get a confirmation of that, right? Like when I post the content, when I post a piece of story, I want to be as useful as possible. And then like I see the result of that through like whether views or comments or whatever it is, right? If I'm doing a coaching, I want to be as useful to that person. And I think we instinctively know this. Whenever we're being useful, when you help somebody, like it can be as simple as like here's a child who's struggling to tie their shoes, and you go there and you tie the shoes for them. And the kid is like, oh my gosh, thank you so much, whatever. That just makes us feel good, right? If you see, like when I was 19, I went clubbing or I went to dinner and we were about to go clubbing, and I had all this leftover food from the restaurant that I didn't want to just throw away, so I placed it next to this homeless woman that was sleeping. And she woke up and she was like, I thought she was going to yell at me, like, are you giving me your leftover food? But she actually opened it and just started eating it like right in front of me. And she's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I haven't eaten all day. Like that made me feel better than anything like I've ever felt, right? To that point. So I think we instinctively know when we're being useful, it feels good. And that can come in the form of coaching. It can come in the form of tying shoes for somebody, giving a homeless person food, whatever it is. And I think the reason why is because, like, I've thought about this a lot. That's why I'm going in tangent. I think as humans, we've evolved to be social animals because, like for 200,000 years, if you're useless in a tribe, like you're like alone, I can do everything by myself, I don't need you, and you're kind of like useless to the tribe, then you're gonna get kicked out of the tribe and you're gonna get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, right? But if you're useful and you're helpful to the people and you're doing something to serve them, then you're part of a tribe and you survive. And through evolution, like they have babies, and so like more useful people have babies and they're more useful, and so on, so on, so on. And then 200,000 later, we're here, and I think it's literally ingrained in our genes to make us feel good when we're being useful. So my purpose in life is to be as useful as possible at whatever is in front of me right now. And it's this podcast. If I'm sending an email to a client, it's how can I be the most useful in that email? If I'm cooking dinner for my wife, like how can I be the most useful? Like, how can I put a smile on my wife's face so when she eats it, she's like, oh my gosh, this is so good, right? And if you live like what I realize is that if you just follow that instinct of like, okay, I want to be useful. I want to be useful now. And if you keep doing that in the micro level and the day-to-day task and whatever is in front of you, it'll lead you to some opportunities. And like, that's kind of what happened for me. nothing that I've done was planned. I didn't plan to teach storytelling. I didn't plan to do a Domestica course with 30,000 students. I didn't plan to build Night Owl Nation. I didn't plan to be a web designer. I didn't plan any of those things. It just, every day, I just focus on being useful in front of me. And that turned into an opportunity that got me there that I haven't even expected. When I actually go back and I look at the things that I planned, I'm like, oh, I want to be a filmmaker. Everything that I actually planned, set a goal on, none of them I achieved. Everything that I achieved accidentally just by being useful day to day, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Makes sense 100%. And I think that's a really deep way to live life right there, is having an internal compass that's based on, like, the bearing is, am I being useful? Because like you mentioned too at the beginning about, some people might think their purpose, like in this moment, like when they think about success, is like getting 1,000 followers. Okay, that's a success. That's a success. But that thing always leads on to the next thing. It's like, okay, I hit that now. Like, I have it now.
Yeah, what's next? Yeah.
I feel good. Yeah. Well, what's next now? But when you're living with that, how can I be useful as your internal compass? You're not only helping yourself, because you're literally helping yourself by helping others. It's like a win-win for both sides. And like, that is never going to end. So when your compass, because I like to think of it a lot, I always try to get into people's why. And whenever I ask somebody what's their why, I always ask, okay, why is that your why? Why is that why your why? And then like when I finally get down to the basis of it, it's all, almost for everybody I think for 100% of people I've ever talked to, it's always leading up to like, I want to be remembered for this type of person.
Mm-mm.
Like at my funeral, I want people to come up and speak about me like this. I don't care. Like some people might say, I want the Lamborghini, I want the big house, I want this, I want that. But then like when I get down to the deepest thing right there, it's always like, I want people to speak about me like this when I'm gone. And when you start with that in every decision that you're making, even with branding, for anything, when you start with that, I think it creates a route and an avenue that could save you so much time and distractions. I have shiny object syndrome, so like I want to go after everything, but when I remember like, hey, like if I do that, is that going to lead me closer to like my why? I can have a clear answer of like yes or no.
I wonder why that is. Why do, like, people care so much about their legacy? I wonder why.
Yeah.
Because I don't. I actually don't care about my legacy at all. Like, but yeah, it must be something like in our genes. Like it's like human nature to be remembered for, being a certain way or something like that.
Yeah. I don't even know if it's necessarily the fact that the other people remembering them like that. I think it's more so the fact that it's assurance that they lived a life that was of service for other people. Like if somebody speaks about me at my funeral and says that, like,
I see what you mean. Okay.
yeah, I was there for them, or I helped them, like in conversations, and I saw them, I wasn't judging them. I think that's just
like they made a difference.
Yeah, like that's just like
no,
assurance.
exactly.
Yeah, that's just
that's what I mean.
Right,
like we want to be useful. We don't want to think of ourselves as like we were on this earth to be useless, like to be waste of air, oxygen. That's not like, we don't want that. We want to make sure that by us being in this earth, we made some contributions, right? Like,
yeah,
we were useful in some ways.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, son, thank you so much for your time. I want to quickly ask too, for all the listeners and everyone, what is the best way they can get involved with your work and what you're doing? I'll put everything in the show notes as well to Night Owl Nation and Night Owls. But what is the best way for people to support you?
Yeah, I would say I think where I post most consistently is Instagram. So it's at sun.yi. And I think my best content, I usually send it in my email. Every week I send out storytelling and content tips. So for that one, just go to sunyi.co/subscribe.
Awesome. Highly recommend that too. I'm on that list and been for a very long time. So highly recommend everyone join that email list right there. Yeah, of course. Well, thank you again so much for your time, son. Appreciate you as always. And yeah, I know that there's people out there that are going to be sitting with this one for a while. There's a lot of information. So, oh yeah, just want to say for the end of this, I try saying this every time now. Please do not listen to this episode and then just go on to another podcast episode. Stop, take some second, think about the stuff and put it into action and figure out what's one action step you can take from this podcast episode today. and let us know. Send us a DM, send us an email about what's something in here that actually helps you. Like, we want to hear that. We don't want you to just listen to this podcast and go on the next one. Like, get stuck in that cycle. Like, tell us what helped. Tell us what worked. But Son, thank you again.
Thanks, Joe.